Okay, so we're diving deep today, and you've given us these really interesting materials, um, excerpts from "Hello and Welcome to Speak English" and "No More.pdf,"
Mhm.
which, yeah, they look like transcripts from the Language Lab podcast, and
Yeah.
it's within these pages, we found these discussions on like three key areas of English language learning:
Yeah.
tackling your accent, communicating like really effectively at work, and then the surprising power of storytelling.
I like that. Yeah.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward:
Okay.
to distill the most valuable insights from these episodes and bringing you like a really concise yet comprehensive understanding of how to like level up your English skills. Think of it as your express route to becoming truly like well-informed and uncovering some unexpected angles along the way without you having to spend hours poring over the originals.
Yeah. I mean, what's I think particularly interesting about the material you've provided is that, we get to hear from these three distinct voices. So we have Dr. Jane Smith, who focuses on the nuances of like accent improvement. And then you have Dr. John Taylor offering guidance on workplace communication. And then finally, we have Dr. Emily Wilson illuminating how storytelling can be a powerful tool for language acquisition.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see the different approaches and yet the common threads that kind of emerge when it comes to, mastering a language.
Okay, cool. So let's just dive right in. Starting with something that I know a lot of people grapple with, and that's their accent.
Sure.
The question posed in the language lab was very direct. Like, what are some tips for improving your accent in a new language?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Smith's first piece of advice is something you can actually start implementing like today, no matter where you are. Immerse yourself in the sounds of native English speakers and like
Yeah.
actively try to mimic what you hear. She specifically suggests using really readily available resources like TV shows, movies, podcasts, audiobooks.
Yeah.
Interestingly, research suggests that focusing on the intonation patterns of native speakers, the rise and fall of the voice when you speak,
Uh-huh.
which carries significant meaning, can have a more significant impact on how your accent is perceived than, perfectly replicating every single vowel or consonant sound.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think sometimes people get caught up in,
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to have every sound perfect.
Yeah.
But really, it's about getting that melody of the language down. So you're not necessarily aiming for like flawless imitation from day one, but it's more about training your ear to that rhythm and flow.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really accessible to people. Like they can just have something on in the background.
Yeah.
Even if they're not, living in an English-speaking environment, just having a podcast on in the background during their commute could start to make a difference.
Absolutely. And this act of listening and mimicking helps you to really internalize those kind of subtle shifts in pitch and stress.
Yeah.
So her next point kind of builds on this foundation, and that is seek out opportunities to actually practice speaking with native English speakers,
Yep.
whether that's in person or through online platforms.
I think that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
There's nothing quite like having a real conversation to get that live feedback and pinpoint those areas where you might need to adjust. I know it can feel a bit daunting to like put yourself out there,
You care?
but the value of that personalized guidance is immense. You can even ask specific questions about sounds or words that you find particularly challenging.
Absolutely. And to build confidence for, those conversations. Dr. Smith recommends incorporating pronunciation exercises into your routine. Things like, consciously repeating words or phrases that you find difficult, or even tackling those tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters.
Yeah, now tongue twisters might seem like just a bit of fun,
Right.
but they're actually incredibly effective for enhancing your articulation and, developing that muscle memory in your mouth needed to actually produce these new sounds. Think of them as like a vocal workout.
Oh, I remember trying to master "She sells seashells."
Yes.
It really does force you to focus on those tricky sounds.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite that you find is like particularly effective for learners?
One of the classic ones is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Oh, yeah.
It really plays with those P and I sounds.
Right.
So yeah, I think, we've covered that in terms of accent. The second excerpt that you provided kind of shifts our focus to a domain that's crucial for many of you, and that's, effective communication in the workplace.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the central question here was, what are some key tips for effective communication in a professional setting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Dr. John Taylor gets straight to the heart of professional communication. He prioritizes clarity and conciseness in your messaging.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of avoiding unnecessary jargon or highly technical terms that might not be universally understood by everyone you're communicating with.
Right.
Yeah, the focus should always be on making your message as straightforward and easy to grasp as possible. A common pitfall here is assuming shared understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, taking that extra moment to just define key terms, even if you think they're common knowledge, can prevent, significant misunderstandings down the line.
That's so vital in a professional context.
Yeah.
I think misinterpretations can lead to wasted time errors, even like workplace conflicts.
Absolutely.
Being direct and to the point, I think, shows respect for everyone's time,
Mm.
and then it ensures that your message lands as intended.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making your communication as digestible as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Taylor brings in, another crucial layer, being mindful of nonverbal communication.
Okay.
And this includes a wide range of cues, such as, your facial expressions, your postures, your gestures, and even your tone of voice.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how often we focus solely on the words we choose, yet these nonverbal signals can so powerfully influence how our message is received.
Right.
Yeah, so for instance, maintaining eye contact can convey confidence and sincerity, while a relaxed posture can foster a more open and collaborative atmosphere.
It's so true. You can have like the most well-crafted email,
Yeah,
but if your tone in a meeting is dismissive or your body language is closed off, it can completely undermine your intended message.
it really can.
Yeah, it really highlights that communication is like a full body experience,
Yeah.
not just about the words coming out of your mouth.
Absolutely. And then Dr. Taylor astutely connects effective communication directly to conflict resolution,
Go ahead.
emphasizing the power of active listening, truly focusing on what the other person is saying and responding thoughtfully rather than reactively to prevent disagreements from escalating.
Yeah.
This really underscores the tangible benefits of, strong communication skills in navigating the complexities of workplace dynamics. It's not just about articulating your own viewpoint, it's about fostering understanding and finding constructive solutions.
That's such a critical insight. I think often conflicts arise simply from feeling unheard or misunderstood.
Absolutely.
Taking the time to really listen,
Yeah.
to try and see the other person's perspective, and then responding in a considered way can be a real game changer in diffusing those tense situations.
It really can be a game changer.
Okay, so now the final piece of the puzzle from these excerpts takes us in a slightly different direction,
Yeah.
but one that's equally valuable for language learners, and that is leveraging the power of storytelling.
Okay. I like it.
So the core question posed to Dr. Emily Wilson was, how can storytelling be an effective tool for learning English? And her key insight is that storytelling provides this like wonderfully engaging and memorable context for language learning. It moves beyond rote memorization of vocabulary lists and grammar rules, and it embeds the language within narratives that you can actually connect with emotionally.
Yeah. I like it.
This really aligns with our goal of creating those aha moments for you, making the learning process feel less like a task and more like an exploration.
Yeah.
And actually, the act of like structuring a narrative engages different parts of your brain
Yes.
compared to just simply memorizing facts.
Yeah.
And that could actually make the learned language more deeply ingrained and easier to recall in context.
It really is. And Dr. Wilson highlights, that engaging with stories allows for a very natural and enjoyable practice of both listening and comprehension skills.
Right.
When you're following a compelling narrative, your brain is actively working to understand the plot, the characters, the subtle nuances, and in the process, you're absorbing vocabulary, grammar, sentence structure almost subconsciously.
Wow.
It's a much more organic and less formal way to learn than, traditional drills. Think back to how you learned your first language. Stories play a huge role.
Absolutely. It's like tapping into that innate human desire to hear and share narratives.
Exactly.
So what are some practical ways that learners can actually harness the power of storytelling in their English learning journey?
Well, Dr. Wilson suggests several excellent methods.
Cool.
Firstly, simply make a conscious effort to listen to English audiobooks or podcasts that tell compelling stories. Again, it's about utilizing those readily available resources.
Yeah.
Secondly, she recommends reading English books or articles and then actively summarizing the story in your own words, either verbally or in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic exercise for checking your comprehension and, actively practicing your language output.
That act of summarizing is so crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
It forces you to not just passively consume the information, but to actively process it.
Right.
Identify those key elements and then articulate them using your own English vocabulary and grammar.
Precisely. And then finally, Dr. Wilson emphasizes the immense value of creating your own stories in English.
Okay.
This is where you really like to put all the pieces together, practicing your writing skills, actively using new vocabulary, applying grammar rules and context. And it can be a tremendous boost to your confidence. Plus, it taps into your creativity and makes the learning process, you know, genuinely fun.
I love that it shifts the focus from just being a receiver of the language
Hmm.
to actively being a creator with it.
Yeah.
So as we bring all these insights together,
Yeah.
what would you say is like the overarching message for you from these diverse perspectives on English language learning?
Well, the core takeaway for me is the multifaceted nature of language acquisition and the importance of active engagement, whether it's actively listening and mimicking for accent refinement,
Hmm.
consciously striving for clarity and considering nonverbal cues in professional communication, or immersing yourself in the captivating world of storytelling for, holistic language development. The key is to be an active participant in your learning journey.
And for you, our listener, hopefully this deep dive has provided you with a concentrated yet comprehensive understanding of these valuable strategies, saving you the time of navigating the original materials yourself while equipping you with practical knowledge that you can start to implement today. What's fascinating to me is how seemingly different aspects of language learning, pronunciation, professional communication, narrative engagement, they're all fundamentally connected by this principle of active interaction with the language.
Absolutely. They all require you to move beyond passive reception and
Yeah.
actively engage with the sounds, the structures, and the cultural nuances of English.
So as you go about your day, consider this. How actively could you incorporate just one of these techniques into your routine, perhaps consciously trying to mimic the intonation of a speaker you admire? Focusing intently on being crystal clear in your next email at work, or even simply choosing an English language audiobook for your next commute or quiet moment. What kind of stories might you want to tell?
That's a great question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.